The 19th century was a period of tremendous spiritual growth and progress for the Baptists in America. And one of the best-known leaders among the Baptists in the 1800s was a pastor, educator, and historian named David Benedict. His labors earned him a worldwide reputation, and according to his contemporaries, his name was a household word among Baptist people. David Benedict's book, History of the Donatists, published in 1875 and reprinted by the Baptist Standard Bearer, contains a brief biography of his life, which is the source of much of the information I'm going to share with you about the amazing influence of this man greatly used of God. David Benedict was born in Norwalk, Connecticut on October 10, 1779. His mother was a godly woman who did her best to raise David in the faith, but she died when David was only 6 years old. David was very inquisitive about the things of God, and throughout his teens he would often seek answers about the Lord from pastors in the community. When he was 20, David finally put his faith in Jesus for salvation. And his great question after he got saved would ultimately help define David Benedict's great purpose for the rest of his life. A common teaching among those who practiced infant baptism was that baptizing infants was the New Testament equivalent of circumcision in the Old Testament. Of course, Baptists have always taught that baptism is only for those who profess faith in Jesus for salvation. The newly saved David Benedict wanted to know which practice the Bible taught. Here's David's description of how he got his answer. As I read my Bible, the question of baptism arose. I went to the minister to inquire for the passage which taught that baptism takes the place of circumcision. He disappointed me by a paraphrase and failed to point me to the chapter and verse. I wrote to Dr. Thomas Baldwin, a Baptist pastor of Boston, for advice, and he directed me to the scriptural teaching. And I was baptized and joined the Stratfield Baptist Church in Fairfield, Connecticut, December 8, 1799, 8 days before the death of George Washington. David Benedict's conviction about Baptist doctrine would be for him a driving force for the rest of his life. While he was still a young man, David met and interacted with men who were or who would become powerful influences for Christ. As a school teacher preparing for college, David Benedict taught Francis Wayland how to read. Francis Wayland would go on to become the president of Brown University, the Baptist college in Rhode Island. David spent time with the well-known pastor of the First Baptist Church of Boston, Samuel Stillman. David met with the elderly Isaac Backus, the great Baptist pastor and historian. In college, David roomed next door to Adoniram Judson. David was befriended by Pastor Stephen Gannot, pastor of the First Baptist Church of Providence, Rhode Island, and the son of John Gannot, the pastor of the First Baptist Church of New York City. While he was a student at Brown University, David Benedict filled the pulpit of the Pawtucket Baptist Church in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. In his first winter in that church, they saw over 40 people saved and baptized. As a college student, he wrote these thoughts. Where I shall go should I live to get through college, I know not. I wish to be resigned to the will of God, and to go where he shall open a door in his providence and appear to call me. After he graduated college, the church in Pawtucket asked him to be their permanent pastor. He accepted, and in October 1806, he was ordained. He pastored the Pawtucket Baptist Church for 23 years. In May of 1808, David married Stephen Gannot's daughter, Margaret. They were married for over 60 years, and they had 12 children. David and Margaret Benedict enjoyed a sweet, loving relationship and a very full and productive ministry together. From the very beginning, David Benedict had a twofold desire for his ministry. He wanted to pastor, and he wanted to study and write about Baptist history, and he's best remembered for the books that he authored. David traveled extensively, over 4,000 miles, collecting documents from local churches. He wrote hundreds of letters to people in places where he couldn't travel, and he examined the records of over 2,000 local churches. In 1813, David Benedict published his great work, History of the Baptists. He continued researching and writing books of church history for the rest of his life, publishing many volumes, including Abridgment of Robinson's History of Baptism in 1817, History of All Religions in 1824 and 50 years among the Baptists in 1860. David Benedict was known for saying that perpetual work is the law of perpetual youth, and he often prayed, "For sudden death, good Lord, prepare us." He worked as diligently in his 90s as he had in his 20s, and he continued writing right up until his death in December of 1874 at 95 years of age. He's buried next to his wife at the Mineral Springs Cemetery in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. His grave marker reads, "A faithful steward of the Lord Jesus Christ." Christian, God will open great doors of influence for you when you decide to say, "I wish to be resigned to the will of God." Stay the course.